Hello there and welcome to the second English Riviera Film Festival show. On the show today we will have Alex Stolz. Now Alex is the founder of the Future of Film Summit and creator of the Film Disruptors podcast. Alex has had a career in the film industry for over 20 years, and previously Alex was head of distribution at the BFI, where he supported the release of over 300 films in the UK and internationally. And over the course of his career, he's conducted roles for such organisations as Film London, the UK Film Council, and many others. Over to you, Alex.
Hi, John. It's great to be here. My name. Start with my name is Alex Stolz, and I guess I've been working in the film industry for 20 years now. I started out in exhibition, so I was a cinema programmer, and then I moved into what was then the UK Film Council, which is the public funding body, and it was newly set up at that point, and I moved into that into a role which was created to fund exhibition and distribution across the UK, and I continued in that, eventually moving over to the BFI when the Film Council was abolished, heading up the distribution funding there. And then since leaving the BFI 4 years ago, I think it is, I've been working, so my background is very much audiences and distribution, and that end of the business where you're actually thinking about what a consumer wants. But so really what I've been trying to do since I've left the BFI is take that insight and that expertise I built up in that space and bring it to production to help producers and help filmmakers create work which they love, but also which is going to connect with an audience and has a place in the market. And that really is where Future of Film came in, because it really came out of a process where I was learning a lot about what's happening in production and the changes which are happening in that space. And I'm incredibly excited. There's been a lot of maybe I'm jumping too far ahead here, but basically the idea of a Future of Film, where that came from, is that there's amazing opportunities now in the production space, and it's something which we're looking to share with filmmakers.
So obviously when, say, like we go back 20 years ago, people were still using video and things like that, but the technology moved on, that if you've got an idea, I mean, Steven Soderbergh made a film on an iPhone, you know, but what do you find, I mean, what inspired you to start the Future of Film Summit? I mean, you sort of said about that, but what inspired you?
Yeah.
How did you bring the people together? Why was that so important to start that?
Well, I guess on a practical level, it really came out of my podcast, which is called Film Disruptors, and it's really, it's a podcast on the future of film, and that's been running for 3 years now, and you can find that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever. And it's that was really kind of me trying to figure out where film's future is going, and it was through that process and that some of the themes which emerged from that, which led to me saying, right, okay, I think the future of, we need to bring this now into an event, and to create something which is where we can actually bring filmmakers and these innovators and technologies together. And so that's sort of where it came from. But what inspired me, I think, is that as you say, the barriers of access are completely falling away, and you're able now to create something of exceptional quality at a very in a very accessible way. And I think that's incredibly exciting. But what that means is that it suddenly opens it up to everybody. So and there's so much content and there's so much competition, and we're not just talking in film. We're talking from Fortnite. We're talking from Quibi. We're talking from all of the streaming services. That your story, whatever you can make now, whatever you want, it's completely achievable. But you've got to make sure that that story is awesome, and you've got to make sure that it cuts through and has a clear audience and telling something in a different, unique way. And so I think that's the point we're getting to now. But there's so much fun stuff happening on the technology side, which is allowing people to realize their stories in new ways.
Because it's, for instance, it's like I look at the special effects, how they've come that you can do yourself. It's like Back to the Future 2, for instance, was amazing when you had all the Marty McFly's, Michael J. Fox was playing 4 different people in the same scene, and they used like a tracking shot, and that was awesome. And then you got The Abyss, which was awesome. But now people can do that kind of stuff at home, but it's moving on a massive leap that green screen is becoming a thing in the past. Like the Mandalorian, for instance, how they're doing that with changing backgrounds on screens.
Yeah.
I mean, how I notice you it's Has, isn't it? Has, the special effects guy you had because he's moving further and further and making his own feature films. And tell me a bit about him.
Well, he's amazing, and he's grasping these tools, primarily these tools, and this is, they use this for the Mandalorian as well. These are game technologies. They come from a game industry, so they're called real-time game engines, and basically they were used to make games on. So when I don't know if you play games, John. I dabble a bit, but you can imagine, designing your your levels and your environment. Something like, it could be like Grand Theft Auto or something. They create all of that within this game engine. They're designing the layout, and then players can play around in that space. Now, what's happening is that film is taking those same tools and using them for the film production process. So people are designing all of their film, all of their shots in this game engine, so they can use it to instead of like a storyboard, they can conceptualize this in a very slick animated form straight off the bat. Then they can use that, and I'm to say this is what Has is doing, and I definitely recommend checking out his work. And I can introduce you, by the way. You can maybe interview him for this. He then takes that product and pitches it, uses it to pitch, to raise finance, to get distribution. And then he can use it to actually polish and perfect and create final shots and sequences in the film. And all of this is very accessible. I mean, he is a special effects guy, so he's kind of more au fait with all of this. But the access point is coming down and down, and to make this something which anyone can have. So if there's one piece of advice I would say to filmmakers looking to create work at the moment, is to look into the real-time game engine technologies like Unity and Unreal Engine, and to see how they can get to grips with that technology, because I think that is going to be defining a lot of what's going to be happening in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, so that's going to open up, but it's still, as you say, stories. I've been to meetings of different like filmmakers, and story is the key. So I downloaded your report from last year that's if you sign up. I don't know if you want to plug that, how to get to look at that.
Yeah, sure. So just on our website, futureoffilm.live, you can access our Future of Film report, which includes it's basically, we trapped all of the speakers and the experts from the Future of Film Summit in a room, locked them in there until they told us what they thought the future of film was going to be, and then we've with King's College London, we've put that into a report. So it's an amazing resource, and you can get that for free at futureoffilm.live. But was there a follow-up question?
Yeah. So what I loved about there was a diagram called the story incubator.
Yeah.
All to do with finance. I mean, obviously people download that, but like you say, story is key. How can you give us a sort of gist of how that works? I mean, people.
Yeah. Well, that's a concept really for how funding might need to change. Instead of moving from a script-based funding model to a story-based funding model. And there's a few things which come into that, which is, really, as creative businesses, I think we need to move away from this idea that we're making standalone products to creating more IP, generating IP which can stretch across different project, formats and stories and media. So it's not, you can create a film out of the same world, you can create a game out of it, and that's where that sort of model comes in. But I think that is, I think the core of it really is that, as you say, story is everything, and it does tend to be even in distribution, it's still the story which is the and that needs, it's not just, there's a lot of great stories which don't do mega bucks at the box office, but the things which make the smaller films stand out, we're not talking about Avengers here, we're talking about the films which pop up, and we're talking about Roger Deakins earlier, 1917. It is the story which elevates, and that's open to everyone. Anyone can, that's not a budget limited thing. So in this world where you are starting to able to create stuff at a very high level, it's all comes back to the story.
Well, I always remember seeing Brick by Ryan Johnson and seeing how much that cost, and what made that film brilliant was the story. I mean, he had very little things to work with on that film, but obviously the story and where that film went led him on to do all the bigger stuff.
Yeah,
just by the story. The story is key. So going on to what you've been in the industry for 20 years, what was it like when you first started compared with now? Is it that long ago?
There were a lot more longer lunches, and that was a sort of there was still a culture of that when I joined. But no, I mean it's been massive change really. I mean, you've had the whole Me Too, Time's Up thing, recently, which has obviously been a huge, a huge moment in the industry and in culture. And you are starting to see more equality now across decision makers and gatekeepers. More representation. On technology level, when I started out, it was all 35mm. So that was we went through the whole digital transition, into cinemas at the UK Film Council. That was our sort of biggest achievement, is that we put the UK ahead of all of the other countries apart from the US in terms of digital cinema, created the digital cinema network across the UK. And so we sort of led that digital cinema transition. And then you've had the streaming revolution. I mean, that has changed everything. It's changed everything. And now in this, you can see in the post-pandemic world, you're going to see. Well, it's going to be interesting to see whether some of the studios are starting to release their stuff from cinemas directly onto streaming now, and will that go back, or will they continue to do that once cinemas are open again? And that's going to be huge, really. I think in terms of in terms of the whole industry, I guess, but also in terms of what cinema, how the business of cinemas, and how they respond to that potential change.
I mean, there's still, it's like, I can't imagine them streaming a James Bond film, for instance, a James Bond thing. You want to see it on the big screen. That's always going to be. It's event cinema. I mean, you've probably seen the changes where there's operas, there's classical things, there's even people doing game things live on the big screen. It's a completely different market.
Yeah, all made possible by the digital, cinema. But absolutely, it's cinemas. What is the role of a cinema in an age where you can get anything anytime? That's the point. And so it's coming back to that experience and coming back to that collective, collective shared experience, and something which you can't. Even though you've got a massive screen at home, it's still something you can't get.
I mean, but the closest in recent years to like an amazing experience was Star Wars: The Force Awakens, because it was Return of our heroes that we grew up with. That big, the film that started the blockbusters. It was like at midnight, and you felt, and there were like cheers and things from the cinema. That is cinema to me, because you can't do that on your own. If you're sat on your own or with your family, if you've got a lot of people in there, they're all enjoying the same thing. That's magic at cinema.
Yeah.
So, sort of summing up here, thanks very much for being on the show today. Can you tell us what's coming for Film Summit 2020?
Well, we've got some exciting speakers lined up. I mean, we're looking to build and to push the boundaries further. We are hoping in November that things will be okay to push ahead. So we're looking at contingencies, as I'm sure everyone is at the moment. But it's we've got some. I can't reveal names. We've got some very exciting producers who have in principle agreed to come. And we want to do more, where we're bringing the more networking and more hands-on stuff, so filmmakers can really get to grips with some of these advances.
Brilliant. And just a plug moment, where can we find out about the Film Summit again and your podcast?
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, it's all in one place now, because I've the podcast and the Film Summit have now have a new home. It's at futureoffilm.live, and you can find out all about the events, the reports, and the podcast at futureoffilm.live.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.